The welcome party at Crestwood High buzzed with excitement. Laughter echoed off the walls, and the scent of fancy finger foods filled the air. Jackson Harrington stood at the center of it all, his confident smile shining brighter than the glittering chandeliers above. With his designer suit and charismatic charm, he captivated his audience. "You know, it's not just about the grades," Jackson declared, throwing his arms wide. "It's about how you carry yourself. Some of us just have that natural advantage." His loyal friends laughed, nodding in agreement, their eyes glinting with admiration. But then the doors swung open, and Alara Thompson stepped inside. The room fell silent for a moment as she entered. Her simple dress, faded jeans, and worn sneakers stood in stark contrast to the shimmering outfits of the elite students around her. Jackson's eyes narrowed, and a smirk crept across his face. "Well, well, look who decided to join us," he called out, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Did you come here straight from the thrift shop?" A wave of laughter rippled through the crowd, and Alara felt the heat rise in her cheeks. She had expected judgment, but this? The sharpness of Jackson's words pierced her heart. Yet, instead of shrinking back, she stood tall. With a steady voice, she replied, "At least I know the value of hard work, Jackson. Some people are born privileged, but that doesn't mean they are better than others." The laughter faded, replaced by an uneasy silence. Jackson blinked, caught off guard by her boldness. She had not wilted under his taunts. Instead, she had thrown his words back at him, planting a seed of doubt in his mind. Who was this girl who dared to challenge him in front of everyone? "Hard work? Please," he scoffed, trying to regain control of the situation. "It's easy to speak bravely when you're the underdog, but let's be real. You'll never fit in here." Alara felt the weight of the crowd's gaze on her, but she refused to let it crush her. "Fitting in isn't what matters. It's standing out and staying true to yourself," she said, her voice steady and clear. As the words hung in the air, a few students exchanged glances, surprised by her response. Jackson's bravado faltered, and he glanced at his friends, who were noticeably quieter now. "Enough with the drama, Alara," he snapped, but his voice lacked conviction. Alara didn't back down. "Why do you care so much about fitting in? You could be a leader, Jackson, if only you stopped hiding behind your privilege and started using your voice for something meaningful." The challenge in her words echoed in the room, and a shift occurred. No longer was Jackson the untouchable king of Crestwood. Now, he was simply a boy facing an unexpected rival. Alara's confidence surprised him, unsettling the carefully crafted image he had built. As the party continued, whispers of admiration began to spread about Alara's courage. Some students approached her, offering friendly smiles, while others glanced at Jackson, unsure of how to react to their former leader. In that moment, Jackson realized he might have underestimated Alara. His laughter, once a weapon, now felt like a foolish shield against the truth she had laid bare. The night stretched on, but the energy had shifted. Alara had arrived, and the game was about to change. Could Jackson maintain his position of power, or had Alara's arrival marked the beginning of something new? The questions lingered in the air, electrifying and unnerving. As the night wore on, both Jackson and Alara felt the weight of their choices, the consequences of their words echoing long after the party ended. As the weeks rolled on at Crestwood, the air buzzed with excitement and tension. Jackson Harrington, once the undisputed king of the school, found himself feeling the heat of competition for the first time. Alara Thompson had emerged as a formidable opponent. Her quiet determination and academic brilliance began to shine through, even in the shadow of Jackson's arrogance. In the bustling hallways, whispers began to circulate. "Did you see Alara's latest project? It was amazing," one student remarked to another, their eyes wide with admiration. Jackson overheard these conversations, and they grated on his nerves. How could they praise her? Didn't they know she was just an outsider? At lunch one day, Jackson gathered his friends around their usual table, a smug grin plastered on his face. "I can't believe people are actually talking about her," he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. What's next? A fan club for the girl in thrift store clothes? His friends laughed, but Jackson noticed the laughter felt forced. They were beginning to look at Alara differently. Each accolade she received chipped away at the pedestal he had built for himself. Deep down, he felt a twinge of unease, but he quickly buried it beneath layers of bravado. Meanwhile, Alara was not deterred. She poured her energy into her studies, determined to prove her worth. The upcoming academic competition was on everyone's mind, and Alara was ready. She spent long nights at her desk, books sprawled open, her focus unwavering. "I have to do this," she said to herself, her voice barely above a whisper as she highlighted key points in her notes. The day of the competition arrived, and excitement buzzed through the air. Students filled the auditorium, the atmosphere charged with anticipation. Jackson sat near the front, confidence radiating off him as he whispered to his friends, "I'll win this, no doubt. Alara doesn't stand a chance." But as the competition unfolded, it became clear that Alara was a force to be reckoned with. Each answer she provided was precise and insightful, her confidence growing with every correct response. Jackson shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his heart racing. This wasn't how he had expected the day to go. "Look at her go," one of his friends muttered, a hint of disbelief in their tone. Jackson clenched his jaw, frustration bubbling beneath the surface. He had always been the best. How could she disrupt his world so easily? When the results were announced, the room erupted in applause. Alara had earned the highest accolades, her name ringing through the auditorium like a victory cry. Jackson felt a knot tighten in his stomach as he forced a smile, clapping along with the crowd. "Well, that's just great," he muttered, his voice barely audible over the cheers. In the days that followed, the whispers about Alara grew louder. Students began to admire her not just for her academic success, but for her perseverance. "I can't believe how hard she works," one girl said to another as they walked through the hall. "She inspires me." Jackson felt a mix of anger and confusion. Why were they looking up to her? She was just a girl who wore secondhand clothes. He tried to shrug off the feelings, but they lingered like an unwelcome shadow. Each time he heard her name, it felt like a reminder that his throne was no longer secure. One afternoon, he found himself alone in the library, brooding over his thoughts. He flipped through a book but couldn't focus. The images of Alara's success haunted him. "Why can't I just be happy for her?" he whispered to himself, frustration boiling over. "I should be the best. I always am." But deep down, a small voice began to echo, slowly shifting his perspective. Maybe Alara's achievements didn't diminish him. Maybe they could coexist in this world of competition. As he sat in silence, he realized that perhaps he had been so focused on being the best that he had forgotten what it meant to be a good person. The challenge had begun, not just between him and Alara, but within himself. Jackson could feel the ground shifting beneath him, and for the first time, he wondered what it truly meant to be great. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over Crestwood Academy, excitement filled the air. It was the night of the annual Spring Gala, an event where students showcased their talents and celebrated the achievements of the year. This year, Jackson Harrington had a plan. Frustrated by Alara's growing popularity and the respect she had earned, he decided to turn the night into a spectacle of humiliation. Jackson gathered his closest friends in a dim corner of the grand hall. "Tonight, we show everyone who really runs this place," he whispered, a mischievous grin spreading across his face. His friends nodded, eager to take part in Jackson's scheme. They had seen how Alara had risen to prominence, and they were ready to put her back in her place. As the event began, students filled the room, dressed in their finest attire. Laughter and music echoed through the hall, and the atmosphere was vibrant. Alara, dressed modestly yet elegantly, arrived with her own group of friends. She felt a mixture of nervousness and excitement. She had worked hard to earn her place at Crestwood, and tonight was about celebrating that. Jackson spotted Alara and raised an eyebrow, signaling to his friends. "Watch this," he said, a glint of mischief in his eyes. He approached the microphone, his voice booming over the crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you're ready for a little fun. Let's give a warm welcome to our very own Alara Thompson." Alara's heart sank as she realized she was being called out. A spotlight shone on her, and she reluctantly stepped forward. The crowd clapped politely, but Jackson's intentions were clear. "Alara, why don't you share with us how you managed to rise from the bottom to, well, here?" he sneered, his words dripping with sarcasm. Laughter erupted from the crowd, echoing in Alara's ears. She felt the heat of embarrassment wash over her, but she straightened her back and stood tall. "You know," she began, her voice steady, "everyone has their own journey. Mine is just different from yours." The laughter died down as the audience shifted their attention. Alara took a deep breath, her heart pounding. "I've faced challenges that many of you may never understand. I lost my mother when I was young and had to learn how to stand on my own. I've worked hard for every achievement I've earned. I hope you can all find inspiration in that, rather than looking for ways to put others down." A hush fell over the crowd. For a moment, Jackson was speechless, his smirk fading. Alara continued, her voice gaining strength. "We all have stories, struggles, and dreams. It's not about where you come from, but where you're going. I choose to lift others up instead of tearing them down." The crowd erupted in applause, their cheers ringing through the hall. Jackson stood frozen, realizing that he had underestimated Alara. Instead of diminishing her, he had only amplified her strength and resilience. "Look at that," Jackson exclaimed, forcing a laugh, but the sound felt hollow. "Looks like Alara is getting all the sympathy tonight." But his words only fueled the crowd's support for Alara. Students began to rally around her, no longer seeing her as a target, but as a commendable competitor. "Alara, Alara," they chanted, their voices echoing with admiration. Jackson felt a knot tighten in his stomach as he watched the shift in the room. What should have been a moment of triumph for him turned into a public defeat. The more he tried to belittle her, the stronger she became in the eyes of their peers. As the applause settled, Alara stepped away from the microphone, her heart racing but filled with a sense of empowerment. She had faced Jackson head-on, and for the first time, she felt like she had truly found her voice. Jackson, however, was left reeling. The crowd that had once been his loyal followers now looked at him with doubt. He realized that his attempts to belittle Alara had only made her stronger. In that moment, he understood that he had lost not only the battle against Alara, but also the respect of his peers. As the night continued, Jackson's thoughts spiraled. He had always prided himself on being at the top, but now he was questioning everything he thought he knew about strength and respect. The seeds of doubt had been planted, and they began to grow, threatening to uproot the very foundation of his identity. As the days passed at Crestwood, a shadow loomed over Jackson Harrington. It was a shadow that had nothing to do with Alara Thompson, the girl he had made a target for his bullying. Instead, it was the news from home that shook him. His father had called him into the study one evening, his face tight with worry. "Jackson," his father began, his voice trembling slightly. "We need to talk about some serious issues. The business isn't doing well, and if things don't change soon, we might lose everything." Jackson felt a chill run down his spine. The world he had always known, the parties, the expensive clothes, the acceptance of his friends, was now at risk. He had taken his privilege for granted, and the thought of losing it filled him with dread. As he left the study, Jackson could feel the weight of his father's words pressing down on him. He wandered through the halls of Crestwood, the laughter of his classmates ringing in his ears. They were all so carefree, so oblivious to the struggles that lay beneath the surface. Jackson's mind drifted back to Alara. She had stood tall in front of the crowd during their confrontations, showing a strength he had never considered before. "Why do I even care?" he muttered to himself, but deep down, he knew the answer. The way she had silenced him with her words haunted him. And now, as he faced his own crisis, he began to reflect on his behavior. Days went by, and Jackson found himself increasingly isolated. His friends noticed his change in demeanor. At lunch one day, Liam, one of his closest friends, leaned over the table. "Hey man, what's up with you? You seem off lately," Liam said, concern etched on his face. "It's nothing," Jackson replied, forcing a smile. "Just thinking." "About Alara?" Liam asked, raising an eyebrow. Jackson shrugged, trying to dismiss the thought, but it lingered. He realized that his arrogance had built a wall between him and everyone else. As he watched Alara from across the cafeteria, laughing with her friends, he felt a pang of envy. She was confident, respected, and admired for her talents. One evening, after school, Jackson found himself sitting on a bench outside, lost in thought. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the campus. He felt vulnerable, exposed in a way he had never experienced before. "I can't keep living like this," he whispered to himself. "I need to change." It was a moment of clarity. Jackson understood that the emptiness he felt arose from his previous behavior. He had spent so much time focusing on being the best, on tearing others down, that he had lost sight of what truly mattered: genuine connection and humility. The next day, he decided he would take a step toward making amends. Jackson approached Alara after class, his heart pounding in his chest. She was standing by her locker, surrounded by a group of students discussing a recent project. Alara?" he called out, his voice softer than usual. She turned to him, surprise flickering across her face. "What do you want, Jackson?" He took a deep breath, steeling himself for what he needed to say. "I know I've been a jerk, and I'm sorry for everything. I realize now that my actions hurt you, and I want to change." Alara narrowed her eyes, skepticism written all over her face. "Why now? After everything that's happened?" "Because I'm facing my own problems," Jackson admitted, feeling the weight of his words. "I see how strong you are, and I respect that. I want to learn from you." For a moment, Alara was silent, her expression unreadable. The surrounding students paused, sensing the tension in the air. "I don't know if I can believe you," she finally replied, crossing her arms. "You've hurt a lot of people." "I know," Jackson said, his voice earnest. "But I want to try. I want to understand what it means to be a better person." After a long pause, Alara sighed. "All right, Jackson. If you're serious, maybe we can talk. But it's going to take time for me to trust you again." Jackson nodded, relief flooding through him. "Thank you, Alara. That's all I ask." As they stood there, a small spark of hope ignited within him. For the first time, Jackson felt the possibility of change, not just for himself, but for the way he connected with others. It was a turning point, and he was ready to embrace it. Jackson Harrington stood at the edge of the school courtyard, his heart racing. The once familiar feeling of superiority was now replaced by a heavy weight in his chest. He watched as Alara Thompson sat on a bench, her nose buried in a book, oblivious to the world around her. He took a deep breath, knowing he had to face her. As he approached, Jackson felt his confidence falter. The echoes of laughter from their past encounters haunted him. He had been a bully, and he knew it. "Alara," he started, his voice shaking slightly. "Can we talk?" Alara looked up, surprise flickering in her eyes. "What do you want, Jackson?" she asked, her tone cautious. She had learned to keep her distance from him, especially after everything that had happened. "I came to apologize," he said, his words tumbling out in a rush. "I know I have treated you badly, and I am really sorry for that. I was wrong." He looked down, unable to meet her gaze, fearing the rejection he had come to expect. Alara narrowed her eyes, skepticism etched on her face. "You expect me to believe that? After everything you've done?" She folded her arms, waiting for what she thought was another trick. "I'm serious," Jackson insisted, finally meeting her gaze. "I've had a lot of time to think about my actions. I was just trying to hide my own insecurities, and I took it out on you. I didn't see how strong you really are." His voice softened, revealing a hint of vulnerability. Alara hesitated, her mind racing. She had built walls around her heart to protect herself. "Why now, Jackson? Why do you want to apologize after all this time?" she asked, searching for sincerity in his eyes. "I guess I realized that being the best doesn't mean hurting others," he replied, his tone earnest. "I've been dealing with my own issues at home. My father's business is struggling, and it made me realize how fragile everything is. I don't want to be that person anymore. I want to change." Alara studied him, trying to gauge whether he was being genuine. "It's going to take more than just words, you know," she said cautiously. "Change is hard, and trust is earned." "I know," Jackson admitted. "I understand that now. I want to show you that I can be better. I want to support you, not tear you down." She could see a flicker of sincerity in his eyes, but doubt still lingered in her mind. "Supporting me? After everything?" she pressed. "How can I trust you?" "I want to help with your goals," Jackson said earnestly. "You are amazing at academics, and I've seen how hard you work. Let's work together. I can help you with the things I know, and you can teach me how to be a better person." Alara considered his words, her heart beginning to soften. "It won't be easy, Jackson. You've hurt a lot of people, not just me. They might not be as quick to forgive," she warned. "I understand," he replied, a hint of desperation in his voice. "But I'll do whatever it takes. I want to make things right. I want to learn from you." After a long pause, Alara sighed, feeling the weight of the moment. "Okay, we can try," she finally said, her voice steady. "But you have to be honest and committed. No more games." A smile broke across Jackson's face, relief washing over him. "I promise. I'll do my best." As they sat down on the bench, a sense of hope began to blossom between them. They shared stories of their past struggles, revealing insecurities they had both kept hidden. Jackson spoke about the pressures of living up to his family's expectations, while Alara shared her experiences of feeling like an outsider at Crestwood. With each word, they began to understand each other more deeply. This conversation was the first step toward a tentative friendship, one built on honesty and the desire to grow. "I never thought I would be sitting here with you," Alara admitted with a small smile. "But maybe we can help each other, after all." "Yeah, I think we can," Jackson replied, a sense of determination in his voice. He knew the road ahead would be challenging, but for the first time, he felt hopeful about the future. Together, they could explore new paths, support each other's dreams, and perhaps find a deeper connection along the way. The sun shone brightly over Crestwood Academy as Jackson Harrington walked through the halls, a new sense of purpose lighting his path. After weeks of reflection and growth, he felt ready to take action. Inspired by Alara Thompson's journey, he decided to create a scholarship program for underprivileged students. It was time to give back and make a real difference. "Hey, Jackson!" called out his friend Mark, who had been his loyal companion through thick and thin. "What's got you looking so serious? Planning another party?" Jackson shook his head, a smile creeping onto his face. "No, Mark. I'm working on something much bigger. I want to start a scholarship program here at Crestwood." Mark raised an eyebrow, surprised. "A scholarship? For underprivileged students? Where is this coming from?" "It's from Alara," Jackson replied, his voice steady but filled with excitement. "She showed me that we need to do more than just enjoy our privilege. We need to help others." As he spoke, Jackson felt a wave of determination wash over him. He knew that starting this program would take effort, but he was ready. That afternoon, he found Alara in the library, surrounded by books and notes. "Hey, Alara," Jackson said, approaching her with a smile. "Can we talk?" Alara looked up, surprised but curious. "Of course, Jackson. What's on your mind?" "I want to create a scholarship program at Crestwood for students like you who deserve a chance to succeed," he explained. "I thought you might want to help me make it happen." Her eyes widened with disbelief. You really mean that? You want my help? Absolutely, said Jackson earnestly. You're a leader among the students. Your voice matters. Together, we can make a difference. Alara smiled, her heart swelling with hope. I would love to help. We can organize events to raise awareness and funds. We can show everyone how important this is. Over the next few weeks, Jackson and Alara worked tirelessly. They held meetings, gathered ideas, and planned events. They invited students from all backgrounds to share their stories, creating a sense of unity throughout the school. One afternoon, they stood in front of a large group of students in the auditorium. Jackson looked out at the faces in the crowd, feeling a mix of excitement and nerves. Thank you all for coming, he began. Alara and I have been working on something special. We want to create a scholarship program to support students who need it most. The room buzzed with curiosity. Alara stepped forward, her voice clear and confident. We believe that everyone deserves a chance to thrive, no matter their background. Together, we can make Crestwood a place where everyone feels included. As they spoke, the atmosphere shifted. Students who once felt divided started to connect. They realized that they all had dreams, and they could help each other achieve them. Let's plan a fundraiser, suggested a student from the back. We could have a talent show. Great idea, Alara exclaimed, her enthusiasm infectious. We can showcase our talents and raise money for the scholarship at the same time. As the plans took shape, Jackson felt a sense of pride. He thought back to the way he had treated Alara in the past and felt grateful for her willingness to forgive. I'm glad we're doing this together, he said quietly to her one afternoon as they worked on flyers. Me too, Jackson, she replied, her eyes shining with determination. It feels good to be part of something bigger. The talent show came together beautifully. Students rehearsed their acts, and the excitement grew. On the night of the event, the auditorium was packed with families and friends. Laughter and cheers echoed through the space as students showcased their talents, from singing to dancing, and even magic tricks. When it was time to announce the amount raised, Jackson took the stage again, feeling a mix of nerves and joy. Thanks to all of you, we've raised enough money to start the scholarship program, he announced, his voice filled with emotion. The crowd erupted in applause, and Alara beamed with pride. They had done it together. As they stood side by side, Jackson realized how much he had changed. He had learned the value of humility, connection, and empathy. As the event wrapped up, Jackson and Alara exchanged smiles, knowing this was just the beginning of their journey. They had not only transformed the school's culture, but also each other, growing into better versions of themselves. They had truly embraced the essence of strength and character, and the Crestwood community would never be the same again. Share this story if you believe that kindness and determination can change lives for the better. Leave a comment about how supporting others has made a difference in your life, and subscribe for more inspiring stories like this one.